Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Debunked here on INX Prime. In the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing on the very important issue of the genocide in Gaza and the Palestinian matter, and the aspects that relate to that in terms of last week's discussion, and that is the narrative, the paid narrative that the Zionists are pushing. But there's another area of great concern, which unfortunately is not getting adequate coverage and is not invoking adequate discussion, and that is the issue of Sudan. Now, who is the guest? Well, I'll tell you who he is in short, and then we'll ask him to tell you more about himself in a little bit more detail. We are honored and blessed to have with us on the program today in studio Dr. Abdul Karim Gibril Elgoni. He is a researcher, he is a social commentator, and he has a special focus on Sudan. But more than that, I'll let him say it in his own words, inshallah. Dr. Abdul Karim, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmah Moulana. Barakallahu feek. I am really privileged to be with you on your excellent program. I am Abdul Karim Elgoni. As you said, I am a Sudanese South African. I came to this country about 33 years ago, and I'm a medical doctor by profession, retired now, and trying to use my skills, knowledge, and connections to make tomorrow better than today for myself, my family, and the community at large.
Let me start with the very basics, because like I said, Sudan doesn't often get coverage, even in dire times like this. Tell our viewers a little bit more about Sudan as a country. I would assume the majority of South Africans have never been to Sudan.
Sudan is a very beautiful country. Sudan was the largest country in Africa. It extends from the southern border of Egypt down to the border of Kenya and DRC. It was the largest country in Africa. It has different environments, from the desert in the north to the tropical weather in the south. And the Sudan was actually formed in the 19th century. There was a revolution in Sudan. A Sudanese said he is the Mahdi of Sudan, and that the Prophet ﷺ has asked him to renew the religion. And he professed this to the Sudanese believed in him, and in following him, they created the Sudan that we know today, from the south up to actually areas that are now part of Egypt. North of the Sudanese border at that time was north of Aswan. So it's a big country, multicultural, multi-tribal. The majority are Muslims, except in the South Sudan, which have seceded now. There is Christians and animists in the country. The country is very rich. We have petrol, we have minerals. Agriculture is the biggest thing because we have the tributaries of the River Nile. So it is a really very rich country. Sudan is a giant that has been brought to its knees by poor governance, by the different governments that have governed Sudan.
Now that you've given us good insight into the country, take us through that north-south tension and divide, and what led to the cessation, as you said, before we get to the current dynamics.
You see, modern life, education has a huge impact on it. And when the British conquered Sudan in the 19th century, when they came after this Mahdist state for about 15 years, they conquered Sudan. And when they conquered Sudan, they brought their British education. And the British education was focusing on the areas where the British were, which is northern Sudan. So South Sudan, in a way, was off the education, except for the missionaries, which were very few. And when the British left after about 60 years of rule in Sudan, they left Sudan to the Sudanese who were educated. And the majority of them was from the northern Sudan. So when the new rule of Sudan came after 1956, the majority who had the skills and the education to keep the government system rolling were mostly northerners. So people in South Sudan, people in the periphery like Darfur, people in the areas like Eastern Sudan, they felt they were not part of the ruling system. And this created grudges between South Sudan, Darfur people, and this is why as Sudan moved on, there were movements in Darfur. It started in South Sudan, then in Darfur, then in the Nuba Mountain, then in the Eastern Sudan, asking for more share of the governance and the resources of Sudan. And this is how things started in the periphery of Sudan.
For a long time, in the recent past, right, we had Umar al-Bashir as the leader. Take us through that period. How was that period? And then obviously it kind of culminated in his ouster. From there, we'll obviously come to the current dynamics.
Okay, let us put it this way. Sudan was plagued by military coups. 1965, we had a military coup that was taken by a civilian rule in 1964. Then Nimeri came in 1969 and he was deposed in 1985. From 1985 to 1989, there was a civilian rule. An elected prime minister, parliament elected, everything was elected, and we had a civil government. The Muslim Brotherhood of Sudan, with al-Bashir, who was a military officer, they had a coup against the civilian rule. That was, the prime minister was Zalil Sadiq al-Mahdi alayhi, rahmatullah. And we were part of that civilian rule. And when they went for the coup, they took all those politicians to jail. I was one of them. I stayed 8 months in jail. Okay, this is how I ended now coming to southern Sudan. So al-Bashir came on. When al-Bashir came on, he was a Muslim brother, from the Muslim Brotherhood movement. And unfortunately for us, the Sudanese, as I told you, Sudan is a multicultural, multi-tribal, multi-religious. They came with a mode of Islam that doesn't believe in the national borders. They believe in the Ummah. And the Ummah shouldn't have national borders. It shouldn't be Sudan, Libya, Saudi Arabia, and this. So they don't believe in that. And they pushed us into that direction. And when they pushed into that direction, the Christians didn't like it because they don't want to be Arabs and they don't want to be Muslims. They wanted to keep their Christian or animist religion. They wanted to be themselves. And we were all pushed to be one system. If you don't like it, you go to jail like myself. So now al-Bashir system continued for about 30 years. Then in 2019, there was another revolution in Sudan. So we have three: 1964, 1985, and then 2019. Al-Bashir was deposed. But when al-Bashir was deposed, the whole government system was under the control of the Muslim Brotherhood of Sudan. So although the upper helm of the system was changed, all the remaining of the system was working. And they worked very hard so that our civilian rule should not succeed, and they must come back to power. This is what has happened in Sudan now.
So who deposed Umar al-Bashir, and then what has happened subsequently in this current conflict?
The revolution that has happened in Sudan, millions of Sudanese were on the street. And they had main, let us say, 4 slogans. One of them is Hurriya, Salam, wa Adala, that we want peace, liberty, and justice for Sudan. The second one was the army must leave politics and go to civilian rule, and the army have created another army that is called Da'm al-Sari', which is the Rapid Support Forces. The Rapid Support Forces was created by al-Bashir through parliament, made a law for it, so it became a formal army. We used to have 2 armies, the National Army and the Rapid Support Forces. So the slogan was the National Army and the Rapid Support Forces must leave out politics and go to govern the borders of Sudan. The third slogan was أي cause ندوس دوس. Cause in Sudan is the word for the Muslim Brotherhood. So it says we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood ruling in Sudan. The fourth slogan was, you see, there was discrimination against people of non-Arab origin. Let me put it to that, the people of African origin. So the fourth slogan was about Darfur people, that Darfur people, whatever they are like us. We are all revolutionists together, and they are Sudanese, they are like us. So those are the four things. They were looking for peace and security for Sudan. They were looking for civilian rule of Sudan, and they wanted to take all the Sudanese to be equal. But unfortunately, the army didn't like being out of politics, and the Muslim Brotherhood movement, which is backing the army, didn't want to go out of politics, and then they created this problem, and they created the war that is happening now in Sudan. We are civilians who are promoting civilian rule, and we don't have arms. We just have our talk, and this is why the force is the force of the gun. This is what we are in now.
Where is Omar al-Bashir? And is he still instrumental behind the scenes in manipulating what is happening currently, or is it the remnants of his 30 years of rule?
No, he is now behind the wheel. During the civilian rule, we took him to jail, and he was there is a case against him that was people were looking at, and he was in. But when the army made a coup against the civilian government, they took al-Bashir and all the other people who were with him out of jail, and they are the ones who are running the country.
So the current conflict now is between these RSF forces and those who still want civilian rule.
See, let me put it to you this way. The Sudan case is a very complex case. It is like if you brought an elephant and you blindfolded people and said to them, tell me what is in front of you. The one who is holding the leg will say, I see a pillar. The one who is holding all those statements will be true statements.
Right.
But they don't describe the full
picture.
Elephant. So, in Sudan, the army and the rapid support forces, they wanted to cling to power. They don't want to give it to the civilians. So they had a coup against the civilian government that is chaired by Dr. Hamdok, who was the prime minister, and they took him to jail and took all his staff to jail. Then there was one chair, the president. And there was a president and a deputy president. And each one of them wanted the chair. So they couldn't work together. Let me put it to you very frankly. They couldn't work together. And the rapid support forces said, no, I am the one who is doing everything. There is no army here. I am the army. I must be the ruler. And the other people said, no, we were ruling this country for 50 years. How would we allow you who came just a few years back to rule? And then they started fighting each other.
So currently now, who has control, or who has control of which parts?
There is no one who has control of any part of Sudan. There is a lot of chaos in Sudan. There are remnants of the previous Sudanese army. He created more than 4 or 5 militias behind him. Some of them are tribal, some of them are previous rebel movement. There is about 5 or 10 rebel movements who are fighting in the side of the army. And on the other side, there is the rapid support forces. There is also a number of other armed forces who are siding with them, but not in the government area, not in the RSF area. There is peace. There is chaos everywhere. There is insecurity. There is no services. All the hospitals in all of Sudan, almost 80% of the health institutions, hospitals and clinics were destroyed. almost all the industrial component of Sudan is destroyed in this war. And there is presence of what we call the army in the northern part of Sudan. There is presence of the rapid support forces in areas of western Sudan, but none of them is controlling the place.
So, external role players, right, within the continent, Egypt, Chad, then you've got Saudi, there's a lot of talk of UAE. What role are they playing, both constructive and otherwise?
You see, Africa was in turmoil since before independence of Africa. And Sudan was a melting pot for people who came from Uganda, from Kenya, from Chad, from Central African Republic. And of all those countries, there are people who are in Sudan, and they were part of the civilian rule in Sudan. So South Sudan has interest because there are millions of thousands of Sudanese in Sudan. Ethiopia is of interest because there are hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians in Sudan. Egypt is interested because the water on the Nile and other Egyptians are in Sudan. Chad, he has hundreds of thousands of Chadians who are in Sudan. So all those countries have vested interest, even if it did not come out clearly. But the other influence that came in is from two areas. One, the previous colonizers and those who are supporting them. The British and the Europeans behind them, and the Americans, who is now the hegemony over all the Europeans. This is one force. The other force is Israel. Israel is afraid of Sudan, that if Sudan became something, Sudan was the biggest supporter of Hamas and of the Palestinians. We fought for the Palestinians in 1948. We fought for them in 1956 with Nasser. We fought. So Sudan was involved in the Palestinian case all those years. And Israel wanted to minimize the role of Sudan in this regional problem that is still simmering, as we were speaking a bit last week. Then al-Bashir participated in the war of Yemen. He participated in the war of Yemen, siding with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states in Yemen. And then after 3 years of participation there was a problem between Saudi Arabia and Emirates. And al-Bashir wanted the dollars that were coming from this war. So he asked the army to stay with Saudi Arabia, and he asked the rapid support forces to stay with the Emirates. And as we proceeded on, Sudan was in the war in Yemen with two forces. RSF supporting the Emirates army in that, and the army supporting that. And all of those people are involved in the war of Sudan. But the biggest influence of the war of Sudan is Egypt, because it has most of the interest in Sudan, because of water, because of the agricultural area, because it is already occupying a huge land of Sudan in the eastern part of Egypt. That is the Sudanese, historically and everything, but it is occupied by Egypt. So Egypt, UAE, and the Europeans and the Americans backing Israeli interest in Sudan are all involved in this war in Sudan.
Paint a picture for us in terms of the humanitarian crisis. I mean, the world's attention at the moment is on Gaza, and understandably so. But from what we do hear and read, it's really dire in Sudan, especially for women, for children, for elderly.
If you just give me one sentence. Whatever you have seen happening in Gaza, multiplied by 10 times in Sudan. The situation is very bad. Sudan has about 40 million. Half of them are displaced, more than half of them. More than 25 million Sudanese were pushed by the war of the last 2 and few months more, pushed from their homes, either within Sudan, not only once, but more than once, or they are within the neighboring countries, Egypt, Chad, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Ethiopia. I want just to give you an example. My extended family, we lived in Khartoum, the capital. I want just to give you an example of my immediate family. My immediate family, when the war started in Khartoum, they went into central Sudan. They went into a town called Kosti. So the war reached Kosti. They moved from Kosti to Wad Madani. The war reached Wad Madani, so they had to move from Wad Madani to an area called Gadarif. Now they are in Gadarif, just one family. And it is not only Elgoni family that have moved more than once. Almost every second Sudanese family has to move more than once because they go to an area, they think the war will not come here, and suddenly the war has arrived there. So the humanitarian crisis is very bad. 80% of the health institution, I'm not talking about hospitals, clinic, health centers, pharmacies, is all destroyed. We have people who have kidney failure who died because just the consumables of the kidney failure clients is not there. Malnutrition is everywhere because for 2 years there was no work, there is no insecticide that was given. Malaria is now killing, previously it doesn't kill because at least 50% of the mosquitoes that come out during the rainy season are killed. Now they are there. Not only malaria, but other mosquito-driven diseases are increasing in Sudan. People are dying every day because of two things. Either by the bullets of the army or the rapid support forces, but also by disease, but also now by hunger. Because for 2 years now, as I told you, because of the movement of people, because of war, people were unable to cultivate their smaller farms that previously were keeping them alive and we keeping them nourished. Now for 2 years, people were unable to cultivate their fields. So malnutrition is the third thing that is now killing the Sudanese very badly.
When do you see a solution, and what's your analysis in terms of the short to medium prospects, looking at what's happening currently?
You see, our Saudi brothers were the first to come to our rescue. And 2 weeks after the war, they convinced the rapid support forces, the two warring parties, the rapid support forces and the army, please, can we have cessation of hostilities? And they agreed, and they went to Jeddah, and they signed an agreement, and we have cessation of hostilities for about 2 weeks. The army didn't like what has happened, and it did not go according to the agreement, because the agreement said, the first thing you must do, those people who are playing politics from behind, al-Bashir and his team of the previous government, who were in jail, they must be taken to jail. The army doesn't want to take them to jail because practically they were the ruling ones. And at the same time, the rapid support forces said, hey, if the army is not agreeing to the agreement, why should I agree to the agreement? So it stayed in the areas where it was occupying people's houses, government offices, they were staying in them. So practically, both of them, they refused. But the Saudis are the first who came to our rescue, and they have been trying and trying and trying. Now, as we talk, the initiative that was taken by the Saudis, that was signed in Jeddah, is now pushed further through the Arab League, through the African Union, through the Europeans, and now the Americans are interested. It was said that Trump wanted to be a peacemaker in the world. He has made peace, the war in Yemen, in Syria. He wanted to stop the war in Gaza. He wanted to stop the war in Sudan, and then he must be eligible for being a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. So this initiative is the last initiative that is happening now, and we hope something will come out of it. Actually, South Africa is also putting their hands although subtly into this system, they are bringing the civilians to South Africa, trying to support them and to review the way they are hoping for the day after the war stops. And there is very good effort from South Africa in this drive.
What should Muslims be doing? What should ordinary citizens be doing? What can we do?
Muslims, especially Muslims of South Africa, this is my own belief. I've been here for 33 years. If they created a peace-building team who can go and speak to the government in Port Sudan and say, enough is enough. And the same team goes and meets the Rapid Support Force and say, enough is enough. I personally believe both the army and the RSF have had their share of this war. And they have seen the problems it's created for them. And both of them wanted someone who can hold their hand and say, please, let us stop now and let us have a peaceful resolution to this conflict. I want to reiterate this. The war in South Sudan in 1955 ended in 1972 on the negotiations table. Al-Bashir's regime, fighting with people in South Sudan, ended the war in the negotiations table. The Darfur issue ended in negotiations table. This war is going also to end in negotiations table. There is no one who will have a military success against the other. The army failed in 2.5 years to get his land back from the RSF, and the RSF have unfortunately also failed to do anything. So they are now tired of fighting, and I hope you and the brothers here can go and offer an olive, an olive branch, pushing together with the Saudis, with the Emiratis, with the Egyptians, with the Americans, with the Scandinavians, with the African Union, who all are pushing for peaceful resolution to the problem in Sudan. Please add your 10-cent value. I know with your sincere hearts, it might make a big difference.
Inshallah, inshallah. Dr. Abdul Karim, shukran so much for your time and for chatting to us on the program. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for handling Sudan issues. And I look forward that at least if we can do something. Malnutrition is a big problem in Sudan. If poverty is a big problem in Sudan, for 2 years people have no salaries, have no income from their farms. We are in need of any humanitarian support, food, clothes, whatever that we can get from South Africa to give it to the Sudanese. There are Sudanese who are refugees in Uganda, in Chad, in Egypt, in South Africa. Whatever little we can collect in South Africa, I encourage INX to have an initiative, and we will support them to collect whatever they can collect and take it to the Sudanese in either in Sudan or any of the neighboring countries. They will make a big difference. Thank you very much for the effort that you are doing.
Inshallah. To our viewers, until next week, inshallah, let's remember the Sudanese people in our du'as as well. And whilst our attention is on Gaza, let's not forget Sudan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.